Okay, so this is a really quick video on how to apply O-ring grease to the pellet pusher area so it actually goes onto the O-ring rather than try to shove it into the O-ring and then you might push excess silicone grease into the breech. You don't want to do that. So yeah, just follow me along and I'll show you how to do that on this Reximex RP22 caliber pistol. Now it's also important to remember when servicing air guns, because they contain many O-rings, and those O-rings are to protect various different parts of the air gun from high pressure, only allowing the pressure to be contained within a certain part of the air gun. Never ever to use metal tools to remove O-rings, because A, you can damage the O-ring, or you can, worse still, you can damage the seat, the O-ring seat, that is where the O-ring makes a seal against a certain part of the gun, and if you do that, they could wind up with a costly repair or a very annoying leak. So there is no necessity to use metal parts. I know many videos show people using all sorts of dental tools to remove O-rings. There are specialist tools available for removing O-rings made out of very hard plastic that will not damage any seating surface. A Reximex RP22 caliber pistol. So let's talk about what we need to service this thing. It's really simple in terms of tools. You're going to need some wooden tools or hard plastic tools, and the simplest wooden tool is a toothpick, good quality toothpick that's not all frayed and broken. And you're going to need some quality, what's inside of here is some quality silicone grease, specifically designed for air guns. You have to see my videos. Silicone greases are not all the same. They have different applications, and you shouldn't use silicone greases which are not designed for air guns, specifically for O-ring seals. So there's an O-ring in here, obviously in the breech where the pellet pusher moves into the breech. The seal, obviously there has to be a high pressure seal in there, and that is achieved from an O-ring sitting in there. Now in this particular model it's possible to expose the surface of the O-ring in here without actually cocking the gun. If you pull this lever to this position here and slightly back, you see it's quite loose. When it's back here, if you don't pull it any further, you won't cock the gun, and you can see the O-ring surface in there. I'll just show you a picture of the O-ring surface. You can see there's a little bit of dust and fluff on there. That's really nothing, but at this point the easiest thing to do is to apply grease in a very small way to the outside of behind the pusher, okay, behind the pusher here, because this is the actual pusher right here, but this part here engages the O-ring seal. So what do you do if you accidentally cock the gun? So I've now cocked the gun and I want to decock it, okay, to make it safe. Well, that's quite easy. You hold the cocking lever and pull the trigger, and as you release the trigger, make sure it's in the firing position, and hold the cocking lever, hold the trigger, and let this slowly return, okay, and that has basically decocked the gun. Okay, so where do we apply the O-ring grease? We want to apply it just at the front portion of this chamfer here, after the pusher rod, because this will engage the O-ring here, and this will add O-ring grease to the O-ring. This has to slide in there and out without creating much friction. So let's get on with it and do that. And to do this, we're going to use a very small amount of silicone grease on an orange stick or toothpick, and we're just going to rub it on the front of that chamfer. Oops, let's just open this up because there's nothing holding that there, no friction. Just going to rub that all around there, like so. Now I'm going to take a picture of that. You'll see there's a lot of grease on there, even though we've used a small amount, and we need to clean that off. So we'll remove that grease, wipe it on, essentially wipe it off with a lint-proof, lint-free piece of tissue paper. And how do you know when you actually have to do this? After so many shots, I recommend in the manual However, I would suggest rather that there should be no stiction when you're closing this lever down to push the pellet. It should go in nice and smoothly like that. If you have to really push this hard to close it, it means your O-ring is either dirty or it's very dry. Because this area in here is really important to keep this well lubricated, not overly lubricated but well lubricated, because this action is constantly every time you load a pellet, obviously this is rubbing against the O-ring. So if this is dirty or it's left to dry out too much, and it is taking grease on it every time it goes in and out of the O-ring. You have to remember too that with silicone grease it tends to creep, so it will run around on this and material might get over here too, which can attract dirt if it's not kept clean. This should be kept clean at this end down here. So yeah, this rear part of the pellet pusher should be kept very clean, because you don't want to get any dust and stuff being introduced at this end into the breech in here. Alright, so you can see this is nice and clean now. You can't see any grease that I've applied here because I've wiped it off. Basically, you don't want to have it covered in grease, because if you have it covered in grease, you're going to attract a lot of dirt and stuff into the breech O-ring there. So it's got to be kept really clean. So I applied that grease and then basically I wiped it off. Not really hard, but just enough so you can't see it here at this magnification, and this slides very nicely into the O-ring. You can feel the action is smooth when it goes in, and that's how you know you've kept that clean and that's looking good.